If you think celebrity scandals are planned, polished, and perfectly controlled, think again. Because tonight, you're about to witness the untold truth behind a moment the media almost buried. A moment that happened on a brightly lit stage, in front of millions watching from home, yet only a few people realized what was unfolding right before their eyes. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover exactly what happened during that unforgettable festival performance, how Shukai and Tan Songyun were seconds away from exposing a bond deeper and more complicated than anyone imagined, and why industry insiders still whisper about it today. Stick around, because the deeper this story goes, the more explosive it becomes, and by the end, you'll understand why the festival incident remains one of the most controversial, unspoken secrets in SONGYU'Ns history. Everyone remembers the festival for its fireworks, the star-studded red carpet, and the flawless performances that lit up the night. But what fans didn't know was that behind the elegance, tension was building, quietly, dangerously, between two stars who had promised never to cross certain boundaries in public again. And yet, fate had a different plan. The night began like any other major celebrity event in China: camera flashes, glamorous gowns, and fans screaming from barricades. Shukai arrived first, tall and effortlessly charismatic in a tailored black suit that made reporters rush to capture every angle. He smiled politely, answered questions with practiced ease, but anyone who knew him closely would have sensed the restlessness in his eyes. Something was off. Something had been off the entire week. Tan Songyun stepped out of her van minutes later, glowing as usual, her soft smile hiding the nervous flutter beneath. She wore a simple, elegant dress that shimmered under the lights, nothing overly extravagant, but undeniably enchanting. The crowd erupted. Even from behind tinted windows, Shukai heard it. He turned instinctively, eyes searching the carpet's edge, and for a second, his expression softened in a way the cameras didn't catch. They hadn't spoken properly for days. Not because of a fight, but because of something more dangerous, feelings that neither of them had been ready to put into words. Feelings that had grown stronger during their recent drama shoot, during late-night rehearsals and quiet dinners, during shared moments that felt too real to be just acting. And tonight, with millions watching, they were supposed to stand on the same stage again. By the time they were escorted backstage, separated by handlers, stylists, and managers, the tension between them had reached its breaking point. Shukai kept glancing toward the hallway that led to Tan Songyun's waiting room. Tan Songyun kept fidgeting with her MIC pack, glancing over her shoulder, praying he wouldn't do anything reckless. But destiny thrives on reckless hearts. The schedule was tight. They were supposed to present an award together before joining a group performance. Simple. Controlled. Professional. Nothing that should cause a problem. Except, problems don't ask for permission. Minutes before showtime, the lights backstage flickered as stage managers rushed around, adjusting cues and replacing faulty equipment. It was chaos, organized, urgent chaos. And in the middle of that storm, Shukai slipped away from his assistant and turned into a narrow hallway. It was the hallway that led to her. Tan Songyun stood alone, rehearsing the lines she had already memorized. She looked calm, but the tremor in her fingers told a different story. Her heart leaped when footsteps approached, and she turned only to freeze. Shukai was standing there, breath shallow, eyes burning with emotions he had hidden too long. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "I know," he replied softly. "But I needed to see you before we go out there." Her chest tightened. This was exactly what she'd been trying to avoid. One vulnerable moment before stepping on stage was all it would take for everything to shatter. Cameras were everywhere. Eyes were everywhere. "If someone sees," she began. "I don't care," he cut in gently, but firmly. "Songyun, about last week, about what I said." Her heart pounded. Last week. The rooftop after filming. The moment he had almost confessed something she wasn't ready to hear. Not because she didn't want it, but because wanting it was dangerous. "Shukai, please," she forced a smile, trying to steady her voice. "We can't do this now." He swallowed hard, nodding but not stepping back. "Okay. But if anything happens out there, stay close. Please." His voice cracked slightly at the end. And just like that, a stage assistant called out for them to get in position. Shu Kai took a tiny step back, not enough to break the connection between them, just enough to seem appropriate. Tan Songyun exhaled shakily, then walked past him, her shoulder brushing against his arm. It was a touch invisible to cameras, but unforgettable to them. The award segment went smoothly at first, practiced lines, polite smiles, perfect synchronization. They looked professional, friendly, harmless. No one watching had any idea of the storm beneath the surface. But then came the moment. As they prepared to exit the stage, Tan Songyun's heel caught on a cable the stage crew had accidentally left in the wrong position. It was tiny, almost invisible, but dangerous in the worst timing possible. She stumbled, not dramatically, not theatrically, but enough to lose her balance as the edge of the stage approached. Before anyone else could react, Shu Kai moved. It wasn't the gentle co-worker reflex cameras had seen 1,000 times before. It was instinct. Protective, urgent, almost desperate. He grabbed her waist firmly, pulling her into his chest with one arm while steadying her with the other. The audience gasped. Flashlights exploded. And Tan Songyun's hands, in pure reflex, clutched the lapels of his suit, holding onto him as if the world was spinning. For 3 whole seconds, they stood like that. 3 seconds that felt like the longest, most dangerous confession of their careers. Her eyes met his. Not scripted. Not acted. Real. Scary. Raw. Shu Kai didn't let go immediately. He didn't want to. And that was the problem. The stage manager waved frantically from the wings, his face pale. He knew what the cameras had just captured. He knew the headlines that would erupt. But the world was already whispering. The audience saw something they had never seen before, Shu Kai looking at Tan Songyun the way a man looks at someone he can't hide from anymore. When they finally stepped backstage, everyone around them began talking at once. Why did you hold her like that? The cameras caught everything. You two need to separate now. What were you thinking? But Shu Kai didn't hear any of it. His focus was on Tan Songyun, who stood frozen, cheeks flushed, trying to calm her breathing. Are you okay? He asked quietly when they were away from the crowd. Yes. Just shaken. He nodded, exhaling a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. I thought I was going to lose you off the stage. She laughed nervously, shaking her head. It wasn't that serious. It was to me, he said softly. Silence. Real silence. The kind that reveals more than words ever could. But before either of them could say anything, an assistant rushed toward them with panic in his voice. You two need to see this. He handed them a tablet. On screen, live replay footage was circulating online, already edited, zoomed in, slowed down, and reposted thousands of times within minutes. Fans were screaming in comments. Journalists were circling like hawks. Their agencies were already drafting emergency statements. And everyone had noticed the way Shu Kai had held her. Everyone. The clip was trending faster than anything that night. Tan Songyun felt her stomach twist. Shu Kai clenched his jaw. This wasn't just a stumble anymore. This was a revelation. A spark that the public had never seen so clearly before. A bond that had been unspoken, suddenly illuminated by stage lights and camera lenses. But what happened next was even more shocking. Because while the media scrambled, while managers panicked, while agencies strategized damage control, the festival organizers insisted the 2 stars join the group performance together because the show had to go on. And in that performance, something happened that no one expected. As the music began, Tan Songyun tried to keep her distance, but Shu Kai gravitated toward her naturally, as if pulled by a magnetic force he couldn't resist. They moved in sync, shared fleeting glances, brushed hands accidentally, and every time it happened, the audience screamed louder. At one point, the choreography required them to stand side by side. Harmless. Simple. But then, a stage firework misfired. It wasn't dangerous, but it was startling, loud enough to make Tan Songyun flinch violently. She moved closer to the nearest person, unintentionally, fatefully, Shu Kai. He reacted instantly again, gently guiding her behind his arm, shielding her without hesitation. And that moment became the second explosion of the night. Fans lost their minds. Cameras zoomed in. Social media exploded. It wasn't staged. It wasn't scripted. It was real. After the performance, Tan Songyun's heart raced uncontrollably as she tried to process what had just happened. Shu Kai looked at her with a mixture of apology and affection. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "For what?" she asked breathlessly. "For not being able to pretend." Her eyes widened. This was dangerous. Beautiful, but dangerous. "We can't," she whispered. "Not like this. Not out there." "I know," he said. "But I also know what I feel. And tonight proved I can't keep hiding it the way the industry expects." She swallowed hard. "Shu Kai, you're making this harder." He stepped closer, voice lower. "Then tell me to stop." She opened her mouth. But no words came out. Because she didn't want him to stop. That was the truth she had been running from. Before anything more could be said, their managers stormed in, separating them, dragging them into different rooms, insisting on statements, denials, damage control plans. The festival incident had become the biggest overnight scandal of the event, and agencies feared uncontrollable rumors. But what no one knew was that behind closed doors, the bond between Shu Kai and Tan Songyun had already reached a point where no amount of PR polishing could erase the connection. Not fully. Not convincingly. And that night, after everything, after chaos and adrenaline and near exposure, Shu Kai managed to slip a small note into Tan Songyun's bag before she left. A note she would find hours later, alone in her apartment, exhausted yet unable to sleep. It read, "If the world saw something tonight, it's because I couldn't hide it anymore." She sat on the edge of her bed, heart pounding, reading it over and over. The festival incident wasn't planned. It wasn't scripted. It was real. A moment that almost exposed everything, and at the same time, brought them closer to a truth they were no longer able to ignore. And from that night onward, nothing between Shu Kai and Tan Songyun was ever the same again. If you thought what happened on that stage was intense, wait until you hear what was happening right before the stumble seen around the internet. What the cameras captured was only the surface. The real story, the breathless, pulse-racing, dangerously intimate story, began moments earlier, backstage, when fate placed Shu Kai and Tan Songyun in the same room for the first time after days of silent tension. And tonight, you're about to step right into that hidden backstage world. The festival was louder and brighter than any event they had attended in months. The air buzzed with anticipation, with fans chanting, reporters pushing forward, and celebrities slipping in and out of rooms like shadows dressed in luxury. But the noisiest place of all was Shu Kai's mind. From the moment he stepped onto the red carpet, he had only one concern: she was coming. He could handle flashing lights. He could handle microphones shoved in his face. He could handle scripted smiles and forced elegance. But he couldn't handle seeing Tan Songyun again after what happened the week before, that night on the rooftop when emotions nearly slipped out of both their control. For 7 days, they avoided each other. On purpose. Not because they disliked each other, but because they liked each other too much. And now the universe had orchestrated this, the two of them presenting an award together, performing together, standing side by side with millions watching. It was a disaster waiting to happen. Backstage, Shu Kai paced in a narrow dressing area, ignoring his team's chatter. The sound of his heartbeat drowned out everything. His assistant tried making small talk, but Shu Kai kept glancing at the door, checking the time, breathing in sharp, restless breaths. Because she should have been there already. And then, soft footsteps. His entire body paused. He didn't need to see her to know it was her. He felt her presence before she even entered the corridor. Tan Songyun arrived like a quiet breeze, but her effect was anything but quiet. Every stylist, assistant, and staff member turned to look. She wasn't dripping in diamonds or wearing an extravagant gown. She didn't need to. A simple pearl-toned dress, paired with her innocent warmth, made her impossible to ignore. Shu Kai's chest tightened. All the restraint he had built over the past week began to crack. She noticed him seconds later. Their eyes met, and the world, noisy, frantic, chaotic, fell into a hush only the two of them could hear. A hush filled with unfinished words and unspoken truths. Her smile hesitated, just slightly. His jaw clenched, just slightly. And that was all it took for a spark to ignite. But professionalism demanded distance. So she looked away, quickly, politely. She greeted the staff around her. She asked for her MIC pack. She pretended her hands weren't shaking. Except they were. Because Shu Kai was watching her with that look again, the look he had given her on the rooftop, when the city lights reflected in her eyes and he had almost told her the feelings he'd buried since their drama shoot. Back then, she had stopped him. Softly. Gently. With trembling lips. Not now, she had whispered. But someday. Maybe. Now here they were again, too close, too vulnerable, too unprepared. The assistant called for them. Shu Kai, Tan Songyun, on standby in 2 minutes. They were pushed toward the same waiting area, just the two of them, surrounded only by curtains and distant echoes of the audience outside. She stood on one side, inhaling deeply. He stood behind her, trying not to stare. But he failed. Her hands were fidgeting again. And for a moment, just a moment, she let herself steal a glance at him from the corner of her eye. That was when it happened. He stepped closer. Not touching. Not speaking. But close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence against her back. Songyun, he whispered. Her breath caught. Not because of his voice. But because of what she heard inside it. Regret. Longing. Fear. Everything he wasn't allowed to say. We can't do this, she whispered back. Not here. I know, he replied, voice barely audible. But I need you to hear me. Just this once. She closed her eyes, fighting a war inside her chest. But she didn't tell him to stop. So he took half a step closer, enough that the scent of his cologne wrapped around her, enough that she could feel the rise and fall of each breath he tried to steady. What happened last week? He murmured, I meant every word. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Shu Kai. Before she could finish, a staffer waved them onto the stage entrance. It was time. No more whispers. No more almost confessions. Only the show. But as she stepped forward, Shu Kai gently brushed his fingers against her wrist, a fleeting touch, invisible to cameras, but powerful enough to send a shiver straight through her. It was that touch, the touch she couldn't forget, that set the stage for what would happen next. The lights hit them instantly. Applause roared. Cameras zoomed in. Their faces shifted back into professional smiles, but if anyone looked closely, they would notice the tiny stiffness in their movements, the slightly hesitant eye contact, the careful way they kept distance. At least at first. They began presenting the award flawlessly, reading their lines, smiling at each other at the right moments, performing perfection. But beneath the surface, the tension grew like a rising tide. He kept stealing glances. She kept avoiding them. And then came the step. The moment. The incident that changed everything. Tan Songyun moved toward the podium, unaware that a cable lay right where her foot would land. A single wrong placement. A single slip. Her heel caught. Her balance vanished. And the crowd gasped. But Shu Kai didn't think. He acted. In one swift movement, fast enough to shock even the stage crew, he grabbed her waist, pulling her firmly against him. His other hand slid behind her shoulder, steadying her like she had always belonged there. The audience erupted. Not because she stumbled. But because of how he held her. Not professionally. Not platonically. Not cautiously. But like someone who had been terrified to lose her long before she ever tripped. She clutched onto his suit, instinctively, desperately, her fingers curling into the fabric as her eyes widened in shock. For a second, she forgot where they were. For a second, she forgot millions were watching. For a second, she let herself melt into his arms. And that was the second the world captured. 3 seconds. 3 seconds that said more than any confession could. Shu Kai didn't let her go immediately. His hand lingered on her waist longer than it should have. His fingers curled protectively. His eyes locked onto hers with an intensity no script could justify. And Tan Songyun, blushing, breathless, looked back at him with something the audience had never seen before. Something fragile. Something dangerous. Something real. The stage manager panicked. The cameraman zoomed in. Fans screamed from the audience seats. Social media exploded the moment the clip aired live. But Shukai didn't hear any of it. All he heard was his own heartbeat. All he saw was her. He finally released her, slowly, reluctantly, but the damage was done. Every camera had captured it. Every viewer had replayed it. Every fan had started analyzing every millisecond in real time. The bond they thought they were hiding was now trending worldwide. Backstage, chaos erupted. Shukai, you held her too long. Songyun, your expression, people are already speculating. You two need separate rooms immediately. Why didn't you let the staff help her? What were you thinking? But Shukai ignored all of it. He turned straight to Tan Songyun, voice low and worried. Are you hurt? No, she whispered, still shaken. Just embarrassed. You could have fallen off the stage. And you could have destroyed your career, she replied quietly. He froze. Then gave a half-smile, gentle, reckless, sincere. For you. I think it was worth it. She stared at him, speechless. Her heart was no longer racing because of the stumble. It was racing because of him. And she didn't know how much longer she could pretend otherwise. If you want part 2, where the viral clip explodes online, agencies get involved, managers panic, and Shukai and Tan Songyun have a secret late-night meeting that changes everything. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Now tell me in the comments. Do you think Shukai held her because of instinct, or something deeper? Did Tan Songyun's reaction expose her true feelings? Should they keep things secret or finally admit the truth? Drop your thoughts below, I can't wait to read your comment.